Hey guys, happy Thursday. Um, I hope everyone's um, getting these social studies and religion assignments done okay. Again, if you guys have any questions over anything, please feel free to email me. I don't know about you, but I'm getting sick of sitting in this house. I'm missing all your little faces. So, um, I emailed you all about possibly trying to download Google Meets. Um, Actually, I put that in Classroom today. If you're able to, with your parents' permission, it's just a good way for us to kind of have some face to face time as a class. And it wouldn't be mandatory, it would just be to, touch base with each other. And if you guys have any questions or anything like that, that would be a good time. We would just meet once a week, or more if you guys wanted to. But so think about it, and let me know what you guys think about that. All right, so yesterday we finished our discussion on, I'm having a blank here. Um, Sectionalism, that's right. So today we're going to talk about some Supreme Court decisions that were a big deal during President Monroe's time here. So the first one is McCullough versus Maryland. And um, both of these cases that we're going to talk about today gave more power to the federal government to help regulate the economy. So the first case, like I said, is McCullough versus Maryland. So after Congress chartered the Second Bank of United States that we talked about yesterday, Maryland tried to tax the bank in order to drive it out of the state. James McCullough, the bank cashier, refused to pay the tax. So, in this case, the court ruled that states had no right to interfere with federal institutions within their border. The ruling strengthened federal power. It also allowed the Bank of the United States to continue, which helped the economy to expand. So, basically, what this is saying is the court said that the states had absolutely no right to tax federal institutions that were in their states. And it helped to make the federal government powerful or more powerful. So the decision addressed the issue of the meaning of the necessary and proper clause found in the Constitution. So it ruled that the federal government had the power to charter the Bank of the United States under the clause. This clause states that the Congress shall have power to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying out functions outlined elsewhere in the Constitution. Since the Constitution gave the federal government the power to tax and borrow money and to regulate business, the court stated that creating a bank could be considered necessary and proper to carrying out these powers. So this is pretty much, this paragraph is just saying that since Congress has the power to tax and to also borrow money, that they should be able to create a bank to carry out those powers. So looking at this ruling, then the next paragraph is talking about how this is viewed. So the Supreme Court took a loose constructionist view of the Constitution, believing that the necessary and proper clause should be interpreted loosely as circumstances changed. Many Americans disagreed with the court. Those who disagreed took a strict constructionist view that the necessary and proper clause permitted only actions absolutely necessary for performing the government's constitutional duties. Strict constructionists generally agreed that the Bank of the United States was not truly necessary for the government to function. So this is saying that this ruling was a loose construction, meaning that you could interpret necessary and proper loosely as you would need to fit the times or the changes that were happening. And a lot of Americans disagreed with this decision because they felt that the Bank of the United States was not really necessary for the government to function. Okay, so it's kind of controversial. The other Supreme Court case that was brought up during this time was Gibbons versus Ogden, which was in 1824. So this was a big deal because the court upheld the power of the federal government to regulate trade between states. So the court struck down a New York law that tried to control steamboat travel between New York and New Jersey. The court ruled that a state could regulate trade only within its own borders. Only the federal government had the power to regulate interstate commerce or trade between different states. This decision helped the national economy by making it easier for the government to regulate trade. All right, so let's break that down a little bit. So in Gibbons versus Ogden, the court is giving more power to the federal government to have more power over interstate commerce. So what is interstate commerce? That's trading between different states. Okay? So the court pretty much said that a state could only control and regulate the trade within its borders. So New York could only regulate and control trading within New York. It didn't have a right to say what New Jersey could do or not do. The only governing power that could control trading between states would be the federal government. This allowed the government to help the national economy by making it easier for the government to control trade. So, on to the next paragraph here. These rulings not only affected the government, they also changed daily life for people in the United States. The New York law had given a monopoly or exclusive rights to Robert Fulton's Steamboat Company to run ferries to New Jersey. Fulton's company was the only one allowed to run ferries between the two states. So before the ruling of Gibbons versus Ogden, New York, the governing law in New York, only gave the right to one steamboat company to run between New Jersey and New York. So it essentially became a monopoly. So Robert Fulton obviously is not happy with the decision of Gibbons and Ogden because New York can only regulate what's happening in New York. If you look at this picture down here, it says Robert Fulton built the first successful steamboat shown here and ran them as ferries from New York to New Jersey. In Gibbons versus Ogden, the Supreme Court ended the exclusive rights New York had given him to run these ferries, which is obviously going to affect his business. And then the last page here, when the Supreme Court struck down this New York law, Fulton's monopoly on steamboat traffic ended. So I just want to reiterate here, a monopoly is when one company and one company only has total control over that business area that they're in. So Fulton pretty much controlled the steamboat ferry traffic going between New York and New Jersey, which then obviously made him a lot of money. So because the Supreme Court struck it down, his company could not compete with companies that charged a lower fare, and people working for Fulton lost their jobs. However, the increased competition was good for consumers because it led to lower fares. So let's think about that. So his company, Fulton's company, downsized pretty much, and people working for him lost their jobs because he wasn't able to compete with companies that were charging lower prices than his prices, which in turn was good for the consumers because they could pay less for a ferry. Many people also like this ruling because it created a single national market for goods and services regulated by the federal government. Having clear national laws to follow made it easier for people to do business and move goods and services nationwide. So unlike in the McCullough versus Maryland, a lot of citizens liked the ruling that the court found for this case of Gibbons versus Ogden. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach two YouTube videos, short videos going over the specifics in these two cases and kind of the reason why they were important at the time and still are relevant today. And then you will again go to Google Classroom and complete just a short quiz. Tuesday when we come back, we'll continue on this lesson. Again, guys, any questions, please contact me. Hoping that you guys can get Google Hangouts because I'm missing your faces and I need to hear your little voices. But I hope everyone's doing well and staying healthy. I do miss you guys. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.